to Victoria.
This is
and Ghost,
live in America.
Michael J.
Latest updates.
This is a very important time in our lives individually and in this time in our nation. We're experiencing an amazing sense of battle and conflict. We're seeing the kind of spiritual, emotional, economic, and psychological warfare being directed against most Americans who are not part of the power structure in America. This is essentially a top-down tyranny with a bottom-up people down in the lower courts and people at the county level, people that have been morally compromised, like Judge Grassley and the sheriff over there in Harney County, the governor and the senators that are so demonized they consider the freedom movement as a virus that needs to be extinguished, when in reality people that understand the truth realize the virus of wicked and immoral tyranny is coming, having to face the antidote for the virus, people bringing the truth, people bringing legitimate constitutional law into the dialogue. And right now, we're bearing a true witness, like the Word of God says, let everything be established in the witness of 2 or 3. We're bearing a true witness that the lawbreakers with badges and guns have confronted the American people with an arrogance, with a terrible evil, even with a pride in their being able to legally, in their own minds, commit murder, and it was even recorded. So people all over the world are seeing the criminality of these people who pretend to be our government. So right now, we are marshaling our forces, we're encouraging one another, we are opening doors for one another and watching each other's backs. And right now, I would like to introduce a godly young woman who, as we explained last week, was God's demonstration of the sovereign, angelic host power of God to keep this young woman and another young woman safe while her vehicle was being filled with bullets by a bunch of sociopaths. So Victoria, dear, God bless you. Welcome to this show, the Truth Unite show. We appreciate your taking the time and sharing the reality of your witness about what it was like to go through this and what we're looking for so that we can find justice for you and for our brother who laid his life down for you. So welcome aboard, little sister. God bless you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Victoria, it's an honor to have you, and you represent, I mean, an amazing story, and I want to give you the chance to again speak on anything that's in your heart, and we'd love kind of a recapitulation of your interpretation of the combat you went through. And Ghost and myself and Michael, we know the effects of going through traumatic combat situations, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of let it settle and get into your DNA and your system. And I know for a fact you are going to emerge from this with such a tremendous strength and warrior spirit, because that's the natural thing that happens when you go into fights and you win and you come out unscathed. You know that God's got your back. You know that nothing can stand against you. He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. Blessed is the Lord my God, who teacheth my hands to war and my fingers to fight. And we fight with our fingers by sending emails and writing letters and making phone calls to congressmen, to senators, to everyone under the sun, to veterans groups, to motorcycle clubs, to community groups, everything in the communities to come alongside and ally and protect you. So I want to let you go ahead and if you have a briefing that you'd like to give or just some thoughts, please do. This isn't a James Cagney song and dance routine, because I know we're all going to just kind of jump in. And of course, Ghost can lead us off if you want. And I want to make sure that we get Stephen Pigeon in to give you the briefing on some of the legal material. So Victoria, you go ahead and start and say what you want, and Ghost, you jump in and tag team, and then we'll let Stephen Pigeon jump in.
All right. So I'm sure most of the people who are listening probably have heard my story of how the boy was shot with his hands in the air, and then they riddled the car with bullets, and only by the grace of God were we not killed in that vehicle. And so ever since then, I've just been pretty much trying to tell my story, and a lot of people have, speculated and tried to say what they think happened at that scene, but no one else was there besides myself, Ryan, and Shauna, who were in the back of the car. And the two of us who have gotten out, and we haven't spoken, both came out with the same story, and that's because it's the truth. And we both are telling the truth. We have no other reason to tell anything else. And if anyone wants to try to speculate, that's all great, but they didn't see it. They weren't there. And I was. So my story will never change because it's the truth.
And we're coming alongside you to protect you and defend you, and no one is going to call you a liar or call you false or fraudulent or in any way disparage your character, because they're disparaging Americans and they're disparaging truth and they're disparaging the God of truth. So we are coming alongside you to defend you and protect you and do as much as we can to make sure no one can take any cheap shots at you. And we don't need to tell your story. You know it, you've told it, and you can continue telling it till Judgment Day, because it is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we need to be aggressive and continuously put it out there, put it forward, because this presentation is the evidence and the testimony that will throw out any and all charges that these idiots think that they can try and attach to Bundy or Finicum or any of the people up there. Because what they've done, and I've said it to everybody, you are the daughter of every American father. You are the daughter of every American mother. And by the grace of God, you're not lying on an aluminum table with bullet holes riddled in your body.
Yes.
You're not lying on that slab because God protected you, and you are alive and well, thankfully. But every American needs to look at the reality that you represent their daughter, and you could have been killed. And it's a miracle you weren't, by them turning the car into Swiss cheese and by murderously attacking you. And I think another grace is the state of Oregon policemen, who were probably yelling at the top of their lungs, "Cease fire, cease fire, what the hell are you doing? What are you shooting at that car for? There's women in there." And the man who came up and tapped you, "It's okay." The state police peeling them away from the federal F.B.I. forces and the mercenary groups who may have been embedded with the F.B.I. forces. All of that's going to come out. All of those assassins and murderers and villains and criminals are all going to come out, and they're all going to hang. They're all going to be charged with attempted murder, because what they did to you was so illegal, so unconstitutional. And Mr. Pitchen's going to go into that, but I want to pass it over to Ghost. Ghost, do you have a briefing that you want to give us, or things that you want to add? And take as much time as you want, pal.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to take too much away from Victoria. I do want to just kind of caveat what you just said about the Oregon State Police. I believe those guys were only there to take the fall if anything went bad. I don't believe, talking to some of those and friends of mine who have talked to them that were at the marches, at the F.B.I. compound, shaking their hands, I don't think they agreed with it. We've never had a problem with them. They've always been cordial and nice to us, to everyone else there. Everybody else has been cordial to them. So I think you're right on track with the Oregon State Police standing up and helping save these people's lives. And I want to put my hat off to them, because I do believe they're really good people, and they didn't agree with what happened. They really didn't. So there's a few things I want to cover before we get to you guys get to questions for Victoria. I talked to LaVoy Finken's family. The funeral is going to be on Friday. The address for the funeral is 1436 South McAllister Drive in Kanab, Utah. The visitation is for LaVoy is going to be from 11 to 2, and the service is going to be from 2:30 to 4.
and the concert will be at 5 o'clock right after that. Victoria will speak at the concert. So if anybody, any patriot out there can get down there, please go. It's important that we show support for what LaVoy stood for, you know, and just the cowboy and the patriotic spirit that lives in this country.
That's exactly right. Every single veteran, every single biker, every single former policeman, every single current policeman, every single Scottish bagpiper, every single fireman, every single Boy Scout, Cub Scout, every member who calls himself an American. If you're going to celebrate the 4th of July and wave your flags, you better go to this man's funeral, because this is the equivalent of celebrating Paul Revere, who ran through the town saying the British are coming. What Victoria and Mr. Finicum did was run through a country that is being ravaged and enslaved and digested and turned into a country full of lobotomized zombies, and they're going through saying, warning, warning, look at what they're doing. We're standing against it. Stand with us. And very few people had the guts or the gumption or the ability to separate themselves from their Sunday day football or their caffeine or nicotine or whatever they're addicted to, or their soft-hearted, wimpy churchianity groups, and very few had the guts to man up and go up and stand with these people and defend them. Had there been a convoy of cars with them when they were going up to Grant County to speak to Grant County, had there been a convoy, the bad guys would never have pulled this stunt. But because there's only 2 cars, well, now we're going to get into an ambush. Now we're going to treat them like Wahhabi jihadists that we've been killing in Iraq. We're just going to kill some American citizens just like we killed them. And these lobotomized F.B.I. assassin murderers who have all sorts of chemical imbalances and dysfunctionalities and trauma because of the war, they go ahead and do this. And we have to prosecute justice. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay. But we also are commanded to pursue justice and expose injustice and expose the truth and be champions of the truth. So I look forward to the day 2 when, and I can't wait to hear Victoria's speech, because I know it'll be epic, and I'm from California, so I'm the only one who can use that word in a surfer style. It will be epic. The only thing that'll be just as epic, and probably still fall short, are the speeches that Mr. Finicum's children will give. I want to hear the 11 children get up there and say, you killed my father. Prepare to serve and get vengeance served upon you. You killed my father. Prepare to be destroyed by the people of the United States of America. You killed my father. Prepare to be prosecuted and thrown in prison. You killed my father. Prepare to go insane because of the torment you're going to soon be enduring. You killed my father. Everyone can be forgiven, but you have to repent of what you did and come to the other side and tell the truth of what you did. And you have to beg forgiveness and plead for the American people to have mercy upon you, and plead to God to have a mercy upon you, because you've murdered a man in cold blood. You tried to murder this young lady, and the American people are standing up like never before, and they're coming alongside Victoria, Ghost, and everyone else up there. So, Ghost, please continue.
Okay. One thing there's a few topics I'd like to cover. One is we need to call our senators. We need to get them to concentrate on what caused this issue as opposed to the issue at hand. Okay, let's go back and see what caused it, and let's fix that problem. If we don't fix that problem, this is going to come around again. The BLM is going to continue to take land in a Nazi format with Gestapo tactics. We need to stop that. So our senators need to be contacted and told that we will not tolerate this. You need to change this. Okay.
Along those lines, Ghost, let me just interject real quick. Brian Onley, you had said something to me before. Say it again real quick so Ghost is advised regarding the BLM in California office.
Absolutely, and gladly, by the way. There was a news report came across the wire services about noon Pacific today that the Bureau of Land Management's office in Redding, California, which is the Western United States Bureau office, was told to suspend all field work this week due to concerns over employee safety. And that came from the Redding Community News.
Spend how they work, that says they're doing illegal activities and that they are pushing the people. Right now, they're actively trying to take Lavoy Finkham's tuck-up ranch. They're still pushing hard on that. We've got to get them to stop that. Their family is under too much stress right now. They can't fight it. We need help on that end too, to really help them out and get that stopped. Another point, as a Christian man, we try to speak God's word. We try to defend the widows and the orphans in court so they get the best defense. I would advise everyone that's listening and everyone that you guys can contact, listen to Chuck Baldwin's sermon on this topic, okay? To me, it is horrific. It is not from the Word of God. It's his own personal opinions, which are totally false and wrong. He comes to conclusions from pride and arrogance. He puts Victoria's testimony down, and it's, people need to watch that and then comment to him directly on his site or however they can that he was wrong and he needs to come out and apologize. You can't take an eyewitness testimony and say that never happened when you weren't there. So as a Christian man, it breaks my heart. And talking to Victoria as much as I do, and going through these her encounters with you, with my wife, it pulls me right back into my combat days, and just brings tears to my eyes when I hear it. So as Christians, we have to stand up for her, stand up for that, and put down the people that are putting her down.
We are going to take lead on that, Ghost. We are going to directly get involved and challenge Baldwin. We have outreached to him in December, and then we weren't able to bring him on, but we will bring him on, and we will address this, and we will make sure he is set right, and that he does not fall into the telling of lies or any of this pride or falsity. We see that as a phenomenon in this country, of course. The churchianity, the bureaucracy of the church, the 501c3ism, and we are encountering it everywhere we go in this country. It's why this country's fallen apart. It's why it's like a wet tissue. And we are going in tomorrow, Michael J. and I, to the church area in this town, and we are going to demand, it was diplomatically stated, of course, but we are going to call all real Christian men to pray for Victoria, for you, for the funeral procession, and we are going to call out every man in our church to commit to praying and either serving God and proving they're Christians, or get ready to hear, "Depart from me, ye who do iniquity, I never knew you." We need to separate from these goats, and this is a clear issue of so many factors. The witness of wickedness and evil, the witness of government corruption and abuse, and the witness of false gospel and false Christian. If you're not a Christian man, if you don't have the guts to stand up and pray and witness, then you are unworthy of anything entitled being an American or a Christian. And we're going to call people out directly. We are going to get in their face and be strong about that. I want to bring Stephen Pigeon on. Stephen, are you there? We need to start empowering Victoria and Ghost with some of your intel.
Well, yeah, thank you, Scott. And Victoria, blessings to you that you have managed to survive this. I'm going to come to this from a point of view of kind of a legal background, without kind of giving legal advice, but rather just giving a legal background, because I have been involved in a number of federal actions concerning violations of the Constitution. We normally bring an action under a particular U.S. code that's very familiar for deprivation of civil rights that is associated with police abuses. Now, of course, we have different issues when it concerns federal actors versus state actors versus local actors. I'm not going to get into that nuance, but generally speaking, the law applies to everybody kind of equally in this respect. If you had somebody come up to you and decide that proportional force. So the key here is understanding proportional force. Proportional force. That's really central to the whole discussion here. Now, what you see quite often with law enforcement, there's a lot of technical rules out there that go along with this. But what you're seeing now in law enforcement, and believe me, there's thousands of videos now on YouTube that substantiate police abuse. You know, I saw a video yesterday about a policeman following some pedestrian, and then he calls backup. The backup just slams the guy in the car and runs him over. There have been many cases. There was a case in Pasco where a Hispanic guy got in an argument with the police, and he started throwing rocks at him. Small rocks, not big rocks, small rocks. So 3 of them pulled out their firearms and shot him to death right there on the sidewalk. There was a case here in Seattle where a Native American was a long-time kind of street denizen guy who was carving on the street. And he had his little carving knife, and he's carving on the street. The rookie police officer comes up and says, "Drop the weapon." He says, "I'm carving." Boom, 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 and he kills him right there. So you see, that's disproportional force. Now, quite often, and Scott made mention of this earlier, what you see with a lot of people in law enforcement is, first of all, they are hired because they are people that are willing to take orders, really without having a consciousness behind the order. In other words, if they say beat that guy up, they beat him up. There's been many articles about some of the police forces doing target practice with civilians. You know, a target of a pregnant woman, a target of an older person, you know, a retiree that they're going to take shots at so that they can become anesthetized to the idea of shooting a pregnant woman, the idea of shooting an elderly person, you know, shooting a handicap, shooting whatever, you know. And so this kind of disproportionality now grows and is bred inside the departments. Now, in addition to that, there's a long history of steroid abuse among many, many departments. And when you see guys that are, you know, we had a situation out here, for instance, it's very well known, that, you know, there was one of the police departments, one of the major cities, that the upper echelon of the department, they were all engaged in a wife-swapping club. And the chief got mad because I guess his wife liked her new partner better than him, so he killed her and himself. Now, the F.B.I. came out to investigate, and did they investigate and charge somebody? No. They basically swept it under the rug. But because we had an FBI investigation, it went politely under the rug. And a lot of these abuses that take place by the police force, it used to be that you had management in place inside the police force that would force the officers to come to understand constitutional rights and to have some constitutional training. Most officers nowadays do not get constitutional training. They get training in, you know, zombie crowd control. So the police unions will bring these guys in, you know, here's how you do this kind of takedown. Here's how you respond with this. Here's how you respond with that. And in all cases, it's how you succeed in using more force than the person against you in order to subdue the situation. And of course, the willingness by many of these police officers to use deadly force is really something to behold. I mean, I believe there are a number of people that are psychopaths or sociopaths inside these departments who are there and took the position so that they could kill other human beings. Period. That's why they took the position. I want to be able to kill somebody and get away with it. You think about what that sociopathy is inside that person that's making that kind of a decision. Now, I don't know all the circumstances concerning what happened. I've seen the videos, but I haven't seen a complete video. I haven't seen the whole thing from beginning to end. Okay? But I can tell you that, you know, the question becomes, it's a question of proportional force. Now, without talking about the facts in this case at all, I'm just going to talk about proportional force. If it was me, if I was the civilian, let's say that it wasn't FBI that was waiting in the snow when the truck went into the snowbank. Let's just say it was some other farmers living out there. Okay? Now some other farmers are pulling. You got somebody went sideways in the road. Let's call it a tractor. Tractor was sideways in the road. You guys are driving down the road. Okay, you're gonna plow into the tractor, or you're gonna do what anybody else does on slick roads and put it in the ditch. So the vehicle goes in the ditch. You get out of the vehicle. Now, if you get out of the vehicle and provides for open carry.
Yep.
And many of the states also allow for open carry. So just because there is an element of fear that is associated with somebody openly carrying a firearm does not give a policeman the authority to shoot. In fact, we were in a case here where we had the police officer himself, who we were suing for abuse of office, and actually excessive use of force. He shows up at the deposition of the plaintiff in full uniform, wearing his sidearm, fully loaded in the holster. And we challenged it and took it on a motion up to the bench. And the judge said, oh yeah, he could show up at the deposition with his sidearm in his holster. So the question is, can I show up at the deposition with my sidearm in my holster across the table from him? Can I do that? At what point does it become an element of fear that exceeds the rule of law? That's another question. But let's say there were farmers out there waiting. And so the driver gets out of his truck and he says, hey, what's up? And maybe he puts his hands out in the respect that his hands are away from his body and they are not moving towards any place where a weapon, a firearm might be. He puts his hands out and he says, hey, what's up? Boom! And he gets shot. Now, if that's a farmer who has done that, he's going to face charges for doing that. He would face charges for doing that. Now, again, I don't have any first-hand knowledge of the events that took place on that road. But I can tell you, the rule is not different for the police than it is for a civilian. You have to use proportional force. Now, a lot of times the courts are going to try to give leeway. They're going to try to give breath to the police and say, well, there's technicalities that don't allow you to sue this particular officer. There's qualified immunity, there's sovereign immunity, there's this, that, and the other thing. All kinds of stuff that keeps these police officers protected by a rule of law. Okay, to some degree that is reasonable. But I can tell you that over the years, really since the Roberts Court has come into power, we've lost all of the protections that we used to have. When I was a young guy, we used to have as a result of the Berger Court, then followed by the Warren Court, there were a lot of civil rights protections given under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And that was designed to stop police abuse, which was going on all over the country at that time. And it was, there was intrinsic racism, there was segregation, there was all kinds of things that were happening inside the police department. And the court said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to exclude this, we're going to prosecute that, and we're going to force the police departments and we're going to force the law enforcement to follow particular constitutional protocols. That's where the Miranda warning came from. You remember the Miranda warning? You have the right to cable TV and all that, right? You have the right to remain silent. But the point being is that the Miranda warning came out of jurisprudence which was giving life to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and some of the subsequent legislation that put teeth behind law enforcement being curtailed and having to follow the law. It's not just the unauthorized use of brutality and force in the field. But as time has gone on, the rule of law has diminished.
Steve, I want to jump in. I want to jump into this particular case because I know you've got time of the essence, and I want Victoria to start thinking on a Cliff Notes presentation to Stephen on what you had talked to us about, what happened to you, so you can give him a very intense, quick briefing. And while you're thinking about how to do that, I want to read to you some of the things, Stephen, we need to be looking at and getting lawyers up there to help them file and participate in. As Ghost had said, number one, we've got the land of Mr. Finicum being now trying to be claimed or stolen in his Tuck Ranch. That's going on. We need lawyers to go up and file an injunction. I'm sorry, go ahead, Victoria.
It was Tuck Up Ranch.
Tuck up.
Scott, you kind of locked up. I think she's just trying to clarify the name of the ranch here. Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to kind of continue on here while Scott is unlocking his computer. Are you unlocked yet, Scott? You back in?
Hey, there we go.
Okay, there you go.
We're up and back. It looks like the bad guys are trying to stop us, but the Lord is with us.
Well, let me say this to you, Scott, before you say anything, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think this is very, very important. When this is an extensive federal action, and because it's an extensive federal action, there because this is such a broad-based action, that by the time this is said and done, I think there's going to be a pretty wide scope to what has happened. Now, there's a whole ton of issues to consider, like venue might be one, counterclaims might be another, civil claims might be another, injunctions may be another, but I would hesitate to give any legal advice whatsoever without doing every lawyer on the planet has a duty to do a thorough investigation of the facts to make sure that they have the facts, know what those facts are, and so that there's nothing frivolous that's going on in front of the court.
Yeah.
Now, like I say, I've given you some rudimentary exchange here about proportionality in the use of force and the use of excessive force in the field, just kind of in a general way, on a general basis.
Yeah, we understand, and you're not giving legal advice, so we totally understand that, and you're protected. In my experience with the law, the things that jump out at me that I would do is file an immediate habeas corpus petition and get Almond Bundy and those men in front of a judge to say we should not be in jail, we want to be immediately released, and there is no crime whatsoever. There needs to be immediate counterclaims, of course, suing the contractors, suing any mercenaries that were participating, suing for immediate release of the truck to be photographed, but immediate court actions that gets them out of jail, that also puts injunctions to stop any claims that the BLM is doing against the children of Finicum or the lands of Finicum, because all of that is pertaining to this case. All of that is material that explains why they assaulted and tried to murder these people. It's because it's tied to the land operations of BLM in Utah and Oregon and Arizona and all sorts of other people. So I want to get lawyers up there to help them to file some of these actions, but that's my gist. But Victoria, I'd like it for you to just tell the story real quick to Stephen. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm trying to think, I guess, where I should start in the story.
Just start like you did before. You got into the car and you drove up, and next thing you know, Almond Bundy is stopped, and that's the first roadblock, and then go from there. When he was taken out, what happened?
Okay, so we were driving, and I actually fell asleep in the back of LaVoy's truck. LaVoy was driving. Ryan Payne was in the right front passenger seat. Ryan Bundy was in the left. He was on my left in the back seat. I was in the middle, and Shauna Cox was on my right. We were driving, and in the vehicle behind us, there was a Jeep. It was a Jeep, and Mark was driving, and Ammon Bundy and Buddha were in that vehicle. And we were just driving down the road, and I fell asleep on Ryan Bundy's shoulder, and then I woke up to them saying, oh, there's vehicles behind us. And the vehicle that Ammon Bundy was being pulled over. And we saw a lot of vehicles behind us. They were black, and some of them had lights, and LaVoy was concerned for our safety, and he was like, I don't think it's safe to stop here. He didn't know what was going on, none of us did. And then the vehicle pulled up behind us, and LaVoy slowed down a little bit, and Ryan Payne, who was in the vehicle, said, I don't know if it's worth it, and maybe he thought LaVoy should slow down, and so LaVoy eventually slowed down and stopped right in the middle of the road, and he rolled his window down, and we could hear the men in the vehicles behind us, and they were shouting to turn the vehicle off and put his hands out the window. And he put his hands and his head out the window immediately, but he didn't turn the vehicle off, and he started to tell them that he wasn't going to turn the vehicle off, that we were going to talk to the sheriff, which was Sheriff Palmer, Glenn Palmer in Grant County. And he told them that if they were going to shoot him, they had a clear shot of his head was out of the vehicle, and he said, so you can shoot me, but if you shoot me, you'll have an innocent man's blood on your hands. We're going to see the sheriff, you need to leave us alone. And we could see there were red lasers on our body in the back seat, and I was afraid that they would shoot us, and so I shouted from my seat, please don't shoot us. And Ryan Payne, who was in the front, he shouted, there's women in the vehicle. And the men behind us shouted that the women needed to get out of the vehicle. but we were being aimed at, and so Ryan Payne said he would ask them how we were supposed to exit the vehicle. And so he put his hands and his head out the window, and as he was shouting that there were women in the vehicle that we were going to get out, and he was about to ask them how, they shot at him. A shot was fired at Ryan, and he ducked back inside the vehicle. And he had done nothing except for put his hands and his head out of his window. So I was like, oh, I'm not getting out. They're going to shoot. So Shauna Cox decided to stay with me, and LaVoy kept telling them, you guys need to stand down, we're going to talk to the sheriff. And Ryan Payne kept talking to them, and he decided he was going to get out of the vehicle. So he told them he was going to get out, and they told him how to get out, and he did that. And then we were talking in the back seat, and Shauna asked LaVoy how much further we had to go, and he said that if we can make it for 50 miles, that we would be safe. And we would be safe into Grant County. So he told us he was going to drive, and we all got down on the floorboard. Shauna, me, and Ryan Bundy, who were in the back, we all got down on the floor. And all this time, Shauna and Ryan were videotaping. Shauna with the camera and her phone, and Ryan Bundy with his phone. But the F.B.I. has possession of all three of those cameras now. And so LaVoy decided to drive, and we all got down, and he started driving. And we kind of popped up because we didn't hear any shots. They had told us that Shauna had said maybe they would shoot the tires out, but we didn't hear shots right away, so we popped up and we kind of looked back to see where the vehicle was, and we could see that they were gaining on us. So we told LaVoy they're catching up. So we all got back down, and then all of a sudden we went around this curve, and there was a roadblock there. And I didn't see the roadblock. We just felt LaVoy swerve and hit the snowbank. And as soon as we hit that snowbank, bullets started flying at the vehicle from the front and the back. And I didn't know at the time that LaVoy was hit, but I believe that he was now, because I was told later that there was blood where he got out of the vehicle at his door. And as soon as the truck came to a stop, LaVoy opened his door and gets out with his hands in the air. He started walking toward the back and away from the vehicle, and he was shouting, if you're going to shoot, and just shoot me then. Just shoot me then. And he just kept saying that over and over. And I was watching him from the back, and so was Ryan Bundy. And I believe Shauna Cox was watching as well. And he was just walking with his hands up, and then they engaged him, and he went down. They shot at him, he went down. And we ducked immediately as soon as we heard those shots, and we saw him go down, and we're like, oh my God, they shot him. And I started to scream, please let me out, please let me help him, I'm an EMT. We heard 3 more shots hit him, or we heard several shots hit him. It sounded like 3 at the time. And we heard the guns go off, but they didn't hit our vehicle, so we assumed they were hitting LaVoy, who was already on the ground. And as soon as I screamed that I was an EMT to please let me out to help him, they started to engage the vehicle. And they shot a lot of rounds into that vehicle. And Ryan Bundy was hit in his shoulder. And we were just hunkered down as far down as we could go. And we were praying so hard that they wouldn't hit us, that the bullets wouldn't hit us. And all the glass on the left side of the vehicle was shattered, and more glass from the front, or the windshield in the front was hit more. But the window to the right, directly to the right of us, in the back seat, did not shatter. And we just stayed there while they shot. We kept screaming and pleading with them to please stop, that we wanted out. And then they started to throw gas into the vehicle. And we wanted to get out because of the gas. We couldn't, because every time they would throw gas, and then more bullets would go off. So we couldn't open the door and get out because they would have shot us. There were bullets hitting the doors. So we couldn't get out. But we were gassed, and we were choking and trying to breathe, and it was very suffocating, and it was extremely scary in there. And it went on for 5 to 10 minutes. They gassed us over and over. They continued to shoot at the vehicle. And finally, when there was a little lull in it, I don't know if they were going to gas us again or what, but I started screaming, "We surrender, we surrender." And we had been trying to find something white while we were in the back of the truck. We had been trying to see if anyone had a white garment that we could throw out the window or something because it was busted out. But we were trying to find something we could put out that was white to show that we were just trying to surrender. And so after I started screaming, "We surrender," then they said to open the left door with our hands up. Someone shouted that from the left of us in the tree line. And so I opened it. I kind of crawled over Ryan, who was hunkered down. He had a bullet in his shoulder. And I opened the door with my hands up, and they said to send Brian out first. So he got out of the vehicle. We told him how to go around. And then they told me to get out of the vehicle, and I had lasers all over my front, like 20 lasers just painting me. And there were men all in the trees, a lot of people, and they were just pointing their guns at me and shouting. And they told me to follow the next voice I heard, and so they had me walk this way and that way and then backwards and stop, and then someone grabbed me by the hair and started screaming in my ear, saying, "Who else is in that vehicle? How many other people are in that vehicle?" And I said, "There's just one other lady." And they were still screaming at me, and they dragged me over and told me to lay on my stomach, and so I did, and they cuffed my hands behind my back. They were saying, "What's the lady's name?" And I couldn't remember. I had just met her, and so I said, "Oh, I remember that it started with an S," but I couldn't remember her name. And they said, "Well, what did she introduce herself as?" And I said, "Well, I couldn't remember." And so then they got Shauna out. They let me set up, and they got Shauna out. And then they started asking us, "Is anyone else in the vehicle? Is there anyone else in that vehicle?" And we said, "No." We said, "No one else is in the vehicle." And they said, "Well, if there's anyone else in that vehicle, they're about to die." And they started to shoot into the vehicle again. And they shot quite a bit, but no one was in there. And then they just sat us on the road, and we could see them standing around the boy's body, and some of them were laughing. They were talking together. And I asked Brian if his shoulder was okay. He said he thinks he got hit, but he didn't see a lot of blood. And so someone cut his shirt. One of the people that were there cut his shirt, and they said, "Oh yeah, there is actually a bullet in his shoulder." And I'll say, by the way, that it was not a foam bullet; it was a lethal bullet. The F.B.I. said that they only shot foam bullets, but he had a lethal bullet in his shoulder. So that's a complete lie. And so they said they would get some medical attention for him, which didn't come for a while. And then they searched us, and they sat us on the back of a van with the doors open, and an officer was standing there watching us. And I was crying a lot. I was really kind of traumatized by the whole scene and everything that had happened. And our noses and our throats and our eyes were burning from the gas they had shot in there. And we started singing. Shauna said, "Let's sing." So we started to sing hymns. Eventually they put us into another van, and they drove down to the site where Ryan Payne had gotten out and where Ammon, Bundy, Mark, and Buddha were. They put them in the van. We told them what had happened. Ammon was really distraught, really sad. All of them seemed pretty sad. Mark was very rude, though. He was rude to me. And then they kept us there for like 2 hours, maybe more. They kept us on site for a long time. We were trying to figure out why we were kept on site for so long. And Brian Bundy was kept on site, too. They didn't take him to the hospital immediately. And he had that bullet in his shoulder, but they kept him there for several hours. And finally, they started driving. They took us to the hospital where they dropped Ryan off. And then we were taken to, we started driving again, and Aaron Bundy found his phone because it started ringing in his front pocket. I guess he didn't realize that he still had it. And so I helped him unzip his coat and get the phone out of his pocket. We were cuffed behind our back, but I was able to reach around because he was sitting next to me. And we called his wife, and we told her what had happened. And then we attempted to call Pete Santelli, and I think they tried to call someone else too, but I can't remember who it was. And then the people that were driving saw that we had the phone, and so they pulled over at the BLM office, and they pulled out Ryan Payne first, and they searched him for the phone, and then they pulled me out, and they searched me for the phone, and they pulled out Ammon, and then they found the phone in his seat, and so they took it and put us back in, and they drove to a rest stop on the highway, and there were a ton of vehicles and a ton of personnel there, F.B.I. and police, and they put everyone in separate vehicles, except for me. I was left in the van. And the two police officers that were originally driving, they drove me to the sheriff's office, and they took me out, and they took me to a room where there was a man and a lady, and the man said that he was an FBI agent, and they said they wanted to ask me some questions, and so they sat me down, and they asked me my name, and they asked me some questions about myself, personal questions, and they asked about my car and where it was, and what kind of car it was, and then they said they wanted me to tell them what had happened. And I said that I didn't want to, that I wanted to speak to a lawyer, and that I didn't want to say anything about what I had seen or what had happened. And they kind of looked at each other and they said, okay, well, you're actually not under arrest. You're free to go. And they said if you can get a ride, if you want to call your mom and see if you can get a ride, you're free to go. So they said they would look for a phone that I could call my mom off of, and then I found that my phone had been returned to me. It was with my coat. So I tried to call my mom, but she didn't answer. She didn't have her phone with her, but she called me off of somebody else's number, and she said that she couldn't get to me. I told her where I was and what had happened, or I just told her that I was at the sheriff's office, that I would tell her what happened later. And she couldn't get to me because there were roadblocks up, and she said that she was trying to contact someone to come and get me. And the FBI officer and the lady that was with him said that they wanted to drop me off at McDonald's and that they could pick me up there. That people could pick me up there. So they took me, and we were driving, I thought, to McDonald's, so then they decided to drop me off at Safeway, which was a grocery store. So they did, and I was standing outside of Safeway trying to get a hold of someone, and the cashier from Safeway came out, and she saw that I was really distraught, and she gave me a hug, which I really appreciated. I really needed a hug at that time. I needed someone to show that they still cared. And then she let me sit in the back of the Safeway and make phone calls to try to get a hold of someone to pick me up. And then while I was talking, that's actually where my first interview was done. When I first told my story, I didn't know I was being recorded, but I called my friend back in Montana, and I was telling him what had happened, and then at the end he said, well, I'm recording this, and he ended up putting that on the internet, onto YouTube. So that's how my story first got out. And then while I was on the phone, someone came in, and 4 people came in, and they picked me up and told me that they were going to take me somewhere safe. And I've been in good hands ever since.
Wow. Well, I have to say, I'm again humbled, and I am silenced in awe that God has done such an incredible thing and a miraculous saving of you. And of course, I'm reminded of Paul singing hymns in the dungeon, and